Chapter 1056. At least they're still with us. Everyone was all up in arms about Excellent Era, but where was the other star of this incident? They had yet to appear after the Challenger League. Right now, it was the final stretch of the regular season. Many life and death matches were being fought. Yet, the place where the most glory reporters had gathered was City H, which didn't even have any teams currently in the Pro League. The reporters swarmed to take a look around the happy internet cafe, and saw people protesting daily outside Club Excellent Era. But where was Yi Shu? He was the reason that they came, but no one ever saw him. Yi Shu didn't appear, nor did any other member of Team Happy. The people working at the internet cafe didn't know either. It was only until they asked one of the employees to contact the boss, Chen Guo, that they found out that Team Happy was still in City B. After the match, they had never come back. After winning the Challenger League, Happy was drowning in delight and triumph. They had forgotten everything else. The post-match press conference? What was that? Such a thought hadn't surfaced in their minds for even a second. They had left the stadium directly and had been welcomed by a group of Guild Happy's 10th server members, led by 7 Fields. The massive group of people had gone to find a place to celebrate their victory. Everyone was eager to toast God Yi Shu. Amongst these fans was Sleeping Moon. Every time he thought of his and Lord Grimm's first meeting in the 10th server, Sleeping Moon wanted to bury himself. His old friends like 7 Fields and Drifting Water still laughed at him even now. You're very brave, daring to challenge God Yi Shu? Sleeping Moon wanted to cry. That god was his idol. If only he had known earlier, it would have been more appropriate for him to go and lick his shoes. After discovering Lord Grimm's true identity, this had become a thorn in his heart. Today, Sleeping Moon wanted to use this chance to properly express himself and wash away the past. Holding his wine and lining up in the queue to toast, Sleeping Moon mentally prepared what he wanted to say. Yet, right after the first toast, someone began shouting, "What happened? What happened?" Sleeping Moon rushed over and took a look at what was happening. Was the god drunk? What did you put in the drink? No one believed the truth and mercilessly surrounded the young man who had toasted first. They immediately thought that he was a spy from Excellent Era. Did this bastard intend to poison their god? I really didn't. The young man was almost crying, trying to explain himself with the empty glass in hand. He is a bit of a lightweight, Chen Guo explained, remembering Yi Shu's younger brother, the real Yi Chu. He's a lightweight? Everyone felt that Boss Chen Guo's words really were modest. If he really had gotten drunk, then could you call this being a lightweight? This was a one-hit KO. The invincible god of glory was instantly KO'd by 1 cup of wine. Without the star of the show, the party died down quite a bit. The players who came up to toast didn't know what to do. That was when Sun Jeping came over, tossing the drunk Yi Shu to one side and rolling up his sleeves, yelling, "Come on. I'll drink with you." The party instantly livened up. It was Chen Guo, seeing Sun Jeping about to drink without care, who said in doubt, "But pro players don't drink, right?" This was something that Yi Shu had told her. If you drank too much too often, it would depress your nervous system, causing your reaction speed to fall, your body to slow down and your hands to tremble. These were all taboos for pro players. That's right. Pro players should never drink. Hearing Chen Guo's words, Sun Jeping turned and smiled a bitter smile before raising his head and downing the cup of wine. Nice. The players all cheered, clustering around Sun Jeping to compete. Seeing this, Chen Guo felt melancholy in her heart. Pro players shouldn't drink, but Sun Jeping evidently no longer felt like he was a real pro player anymore. This celebratory event, for him, also held sorrow. He should have been able to do more. What little contributions he had made wasn't enough to satisfy him. Mo Fan didn't get many chances to play and Luo Ji didn't even appear in the finals, but they had futures ahead of them. They had time and opportunity to compete, but Sun Jeping didn't. He could only end things here, heart yearning for more and victory adding to his disappointment. This was probably the reason he never returned, even though he could still manage to play at a pro level with some strain. For him, this wasn't nearly enough. What happened? What happened? Chen Guo was still over here feeling melancholy for Sun Jeping when a commotion broke out there. She went over to see and found that Sun Jeping had fallen, too. How many glasses? A player who was probably about to strike, holding a glass of wine, asked. 3, a person with an empty glass said incredulously. With Yishu being OHKO'd before, 3 glasses didn't seem all that shocking, but the problem was Sun Ziping's bring-it-on attitude from before. Everyone thought he was a great drinker who would take ages to get tipsy, but he fell at just 3 glasses? 3 glasses wasn't much better than 1 glass. Chen Guo felt even worse now. Sun Ziping actually couldn't drink at all, could he? These gods, for their dreams, were always strict with themselves. How many years had it been since Sun Ziping had retired? He was evidently still holding himself to that rule of not touching alcohol, otherwise he wouldn't be down with just 3 glasses. Drinking ability was like mechanical skill, it could be trained, to some extent. Yet Sun Ziping didn't. He persisted with the habits of pro players, protecting his own body. Did he hope to one day have the chance to return to the battlefield? Chen Guo didn't think on it further, silently helping Sun Ziping to the side. Another so fast? On one corner of the sofa, Su Mucheng was eating sunflower seeds. The blackout drunk Yishu was sleeping askew to one side. Soon enough, Sun Ziping was shoved over. Chen Guo sighed. When she was just a fan, all she saw was the spectacular performance these gods had on the field. She would have never considered the amount of effort they had to put in off the field. What's wrong? Su Mucheng would tell how Chen Guo didn't seem very happy. This was a night of their victory. What could wash away the joy of a championship? Chen Guo glanced at the drunken two, but didn't really know how to explain. Don't worry, Su Mucheng seemed to understand upon seeing Chen Guo's gaze. At least everyone is still with us. At least everyone is still with us. Chen Guo didn't know how to react for a moment and glanced at the two again. That's right. It didn't matter if it was Yishu who had been kicked by his club, or Sun Ziping who could no longer reach his peak, what with the injury to his hand, or Wei Chen over there who had retired for longer than most people's pro careers yet was still doing his all to climb back to the top. Their lives hadn't been smooth, but no matter what, they didn't give up. They held hope in their hearts and charged forwards at every opportunity. No matter what, they were still here. These two useless things, my turn, over there. Wei Chen looked at the two drunk gods with disdain and rolled up his sleeves, preparing for battle. The guild happy members muttered among themselves, not very enthusiastic about Wei Chen's upcoming performance. I bet 4 glasses and he blacks out. I bet 5. I think I'll bet 3. No one betting 1 glass? If no one's betting 1 glass, I will. Alright, confirm your bets. They had even began a betting pool about Wei Chen. It was doubtful that many would go home sober tonight. Chen Guo originally was going to be strict with herself, but then she drank a little out of courtesy every now and then and ended up tipsy. Steamed Bun, Wu Chen, Luo Jian and Wen Yi were all swaying about. Even Mo Fan, who barely interacted with anyone, had managed to drink himself into being unable to walk straight. 100 glasses. I bet 100 glasses, Wei Chen hollered as he walked out with the others, all supporting each other. Wei Chen didn't lose face for pro players. He really could drink. If he really managed 100 glasses, no one would know, but at the very least he could walk by himself with some help from the wall. It was just that after he left, he got on a taxi and asked to be sent back to Happy Internet Cafe. Under the taxi driver's confused gaze, he was dragged back out. It was a good thing that the girls hadn't gotten so drunk. After sending off wave after wave of guild happy players, they got the drunk guys back to the hotel. When she next woke, it was already noon. Opening her eyes, Chen Guo was immediately blinded by the sunlight. She glanced around her room. There was no one there. Originally, this was her and Tang Ru's room, but she didn't know where everyone slept after last night. We really won the Challenger League? Chen Guo stared at the ceiling, ignoring the blinding sunlight, and suddenly felt a little lost. Drunken nights were always very blurred. With their victory of the championship, it all seemed like a fantasy. Chen Guo quickly rolled to her feet and went to find her handbag. The handbag was right beside her pillow and Chen Guo opened it, quickly finding what she wanted. The qualification certificate to the Pro Alliance. Team Happy. Yes, they really did it. All of this was real. In that moment, Chen Guo felt like she was surrounded with bliss. Last night was full of passion, excitement, energy. Only after giving it a night to sink in did the satisfaction and bliss of getting the championship really flood in. Where are the others? Chen Guo hurriedly got up and charged out of her room. The others were getting up as well, though the others who had been dead drunk weren't nearly as lively as Chen Guo, who had only been tipsy. You all right? Chen Guo greeted everyone before seeing Yi Shu still asleep on the bed. He's really too weak, Chen Guo recalled the scene from last night. I know he's a lightweight, but getting blackout drunk with just a cup just seems unreal. It's not just from drinking, Wei Chen said, he's exhausted. Let him rest a few days. Chapter 1057. End of the regular season. Yi Shu slept for an entire day. The rest of the team felt sluggish for a day after all the drinking and celebrating. Chen Guo spent her time on the web, surfing through all the reports of Happy's victory in the Challenger League and bursting with joy. Yet, on this day, they also received a phone call from the Alliance. Happy was solemnly admonished for their conduct during the press conference after the competition. We forgot. We were so happy that we completely forgot, Chen Guo gave this explanation. The Alliance immediately communicated that they would not be launching an investigation. However, as one of the new teams entering the Alliance next season, there would be another press conference that they would have to attend. Obviously, Chen Guo had no way of refusing this request. After asking for a date, she found that they still had a week. This press conference for new teams would only take place after the season had ended. They at least had to figure out which teams each of the two new entries would be replacing first. That day was also the second to last round of the season. Because Heavenly Swords would be preparing for the competition, they only congratulated Happy on their championship over the phone the day before. They obviously didn't have the chance to gather together. This Saturday, Luo Guanning sent over a stack of tickets, inviting everyone in Happy to watch the match. After that night's match was finished, the two groups pooled together, once again enthusiastically celebrating. This was partly because Heavenly Swords wanted to make up for the lack of in-person blessings during the previous evening. At the same time, after this round, they also had a reason to celebrate themselves. They had maintained their spot in the Alliance. Maintaining a spot in the Alliance. This was Heavenly Swords' goal after realizing their own strength. This was definitely below the expectations that the media often painted for them. All of Heavenly Swords' publicity after their announcement of joining the Alliance had shown off their financial resources, leading many to expect them to be a dark horse. The preseason forecasts even dared to place them in the number 10 spot. All of this failed to sway Heavenly Swords from their intended path. Every step that they took was sure and steady. In this way, the early stages were unusually tough. The professional league was indeed not as simple as they had once thought. Luckily, this season, Glory had released an expansion, winning them an opportunity. This kind of change was very good news for low to mid-tier teams. The widespread emergence of level 75 orange equipment allowed them to somewhat shrink the character strength gap between them and more powerful teams in a short amount of time. Yet in addition to this, Heavenly Swords was also an in-game ally of Happy. This allowed them to focus their energy on competitions. It could be said that, while many pro players rushed into the game, they were freed from such a burden by Happy's presence. All of this was left unsaid between the two sides, but within their hearts each knew this clearly. Now, the second to last match of the season was complete. Team Heavenly Swords ultimately locked in 14th place. The outcome of the last match of the season wouldn't affect their ranking. Although this contradicted the preseason media expectations for the team, Heavenly Swords had completely achieved the goal they had set for themselves. They were especially aware of the fact that had it not been for the expansion, had it not been for the fact that they could continue to concentrate their energy on the matches during that time period, they would be in a precarious place right now. Before this, Heavenly Swords' placement had been just around the relegation zone, their situation in imminent danger. To Happy's victory. To Heavenly Swords' continued spot in the Alliance. Let's toast, Luo Guanning took the lead to cheer. However, Happy had been completely intoxicated the day before, so today they really needed to demonstrate some control. As for Heavenly Swords, they had all been pro players for a year now, so they would also control themselves when celebrating. Next season, we'll be opponents, Luo Guanning said with infinite sorrow. Interacting with Happy, especially interacting with the god Yi Shu, had really brought a considerable amount of profit for their Heavenly Swords. If he had a choice, Luo Guanning obviously wouldn't want to give up this kind of friendship and become opponents. I hope that in the future, we won't run into a kill or be killed situation against you. Luo Guanning raised his glass towards the ladies and gentlemen of Happy. However, even if this happens, no matter the outcome, I swear our friendship off stage will not change. Ha ha ha, you're thinking too much, little Luo. Yishu laughed. I'm afraid our two teams have completely different goals. That type of kill or be killed situation shouldn't arise. Oh, what's Happy's goal for the next season? Luo Guanning asked curiously. Champions. PFFFF. Even with all of his etiquette training, and despite his usual unshakable elegance and composure, Luo Guanning spit out the sip of wine he had just taken. He hurriedly apologized to the person he had spit on. Just a while ago, when the five of them had gathered together to create a team, their goal had also been to directly aim for the championships. They had been prepared to take the alliance by storm. After they met the god, he had helped them realize how unrealistic their goal was. For a team that had been constantly pulling small heists within the game, saying that they were directing aiming to become champions was really too disrespectful to the alliance. But God, you can't have this kind of double standard. You called us unrealistic and impractical, yet your team, which has just joined the alliance, is already shouting about becoming the champions? Isn't that too unconvincing? Even though you have the strength of a god, what about the other characters and players on your team? Glory isn't meant to be played alone, wasn't this what you said at the end of the competition yesterday? Luo Guanning couldn't accept this, yet this also wasn't something he could easily say out loud. However, whether or not he said this out loud didn't even matter. The mouthful of wine that he had spit out had already made his thoughts very clear. Ha ha ha, Yishu nevertheless laughed at his appearance, not giving an explanation for his words. He simply raised his glass, also giving a toast, everyone come. Tonight's celebration was subdued, yet when all was said and done it couldn't really count as any kind of real rest. After today, Chen Guo didn't even call everyone back to City H, instead looking for a resort within City B she directly dragged the entire team over for some real rest and recuperation. The place that Luo Guanning introduced was truly a location on the level of the Peach Spring beyond this world, ****. It was only through his name and connections that Happy's people got the chance to enjoy it. This place was truly detached from the outside world and devoid of distractions. However, going online every day and seeing everyone's reactions to their victory was still Chen Guo's greatest joy. The praises showered upon Happy and the questions aimed at Excellent Era all made Chen Guo sigh with contentment. She felt especially vindicated seeing that reporters had visited the Happy Internet Cafe, and had been given a tour of Yishu's previous dwelling in the storage room. Their violent announcements were simultaneously laughable and sad. Finally, we've won. Seeing all the different news reports and remembering everything that had happened over the past year, Chen Guo felt very moved. Although she was this team's boss, in reality she really hadn't done much. All of the most demanding burdens were pretty much being shouldered by Yishu alone. In a year and a half, starting from a brand new server and a new account, leveling up, finding people, fighting for materials, upgrading equipment, training the other players. Yishu had truly done so much, yet Chen Guo, who was always by his side, had only become aware of it now. They relaxed in the resort for a week. Meanwhile, the Pro Alliance had reached its final stages. Excellent Era also dropped a bomb. They had entered the scrap market and were ready to sell. During this week, Chen Guo had also been contacted many times by people who wanted to meet and interview Yishu. She rejected all of these requests. Although she had long wanted Yishu to step out and give a serious response about the true nature of his retirement, at this time, she just wanted Yishu to get some good rest because she had discovered that this was truly the most important thing to Yishu. He needed to recover his health and adjust his mental state. Only like this could he continue persevering on the glory stage. To Yishu, this year and a half wasn't as simple as merely missing the pro stage. When all was said and done, how much did this year and a half of demanding labor shorten the career span of this already aging pro player? A week of recuperation might not be able to save much. Yet, Chen Guo did not wish to see Yishu spending more time and energy doing other things during this period of time. He's truly too tired. He needs to rest properly. Wei Chen's words rang true. Chen Guo could only do her best to create for him a good resting environment. This at least was something she could work hard to achieve. On Saturday night, amidst the dispute and clamor that Team Excellent Era was facing, the regular season of Season 9 of the Glory Pro League officially came to an end. Team Tyranny did not fail to meet expectations, placing first in the regular season. However, they failed to break Excellent Era's old record score. After all, now was a shining era filled with stars. With the immense improvement in technology, Excellent Era's overwhelming strength from those days was becoming increasingly difficult to duplicate. Tyranny and Excellent Era, a pair of mortal enemies from the past. However, Tyranny was the team at the top. Even as people felt sorrowful that such a record could not be surpassed, they also thought about how the record-holding and archenemy Team Excellent Era was currently crumbling to pieces on the side. In the interview with Team Tyranny's captain Han Wenking after the season ended, the question of the captain's opinion on Excellent Era's situation was posed. Han Wenking did not take joy in his opponent's suffering, yet he mercilessly replied with one sentence, "They reaped what they sowed." After Tyranny, the previous championship Team Samsara stood in second place. Their ace player Joe Zakai was the same as ever, gorgeous and powerful. Although they were nominally second place, compared to the previous season, Samsara was surprisingly even stronger than before. It could only be said that this season, Team Tyranny was more steady and efficient. In third place was Team Wind Howl. Under the lead of their new ace Tang Hao, Wind Howl displayed their strength from the start. Their goal was no longer simply making playoffs, instead, they were aiming for the championships. However, in the end, they still failed to surpass the two teams ahead, although they did manage to beat Tiny Herb and Blue Rain by a full head. Tiny Herb and Blue Rain stood in fourth and fifth place. The greatest excitement that this pair of old powerhouses brought were their two young rookies. The prodigy Gao Yingji had officially become a part of the main force of Tiny Herb this season, with many eye-catching performances. On Blue Rain's ride, the 14-year-old Lu Hanwen was even more extraordinary, directly filling the gap left by all-star Yu Feng after his transfer. He truly embodied the saying, "The newborn calf isn't afraid of the tiger," radiating all kinds of passion and enthusiasm on stage. Even though he still had many flaws in his playstyle, outside of him there really wasn't a choice for this season's best rookie. Gao Yingji very much regretted that he was already a second-year player, and thus no longer qualified for the title of Best Rookie. After these five teams, Misty Rain, Void, and 100 Blossoms occupied 6th through 8th place. Chapter 1058. New Team Press Conference. Overall, the situation in the Alliance hadn't seen much change. Although Wild Howl had surged up the ranks, the other powerhouses hadn't fallen either. Instead, it was Thunderclap and 301 Degrees that hadn't managed to make it into the playoffs after losing Xiao Shiken and Xu Bin. Team 100 Blossoms hadn't been off to a good start, unstable for the first half of the season, but after the update, their performance surged. From the team to the fans, they all exhibited a peak in fighting spirit and performed better and better, eventually catching the last bus to the playoffs. With the rankings set in stone for the regular season, the schedule for the playoffs was released. The most intense clash of the first round was the 4th-ranked Blue Rain and 5th-ranked Tiny Herb. As these two teams were both champion-level powerhouses, this clash would doubtlessly be tagged with the tag pre-finals or something along those lines. In addition, with the disharmony between the two teams, and the fact that both teams had very amazing rookies, this match was abundant with discussion and content. However, if you were talking about hot topics, then the hottest one would definitely be the clash between the 1st-ranked Tyranny and 8th-ranked 100 Blossoms in the first round. Zhang Zhao's arrival at Tyranny upon his return was still being debated about even now. Now, with Zhang Jiali allied to Tyranny and facing the team he had once led, Team 100 Blossoms, no drama lover would miss the war that was set to rage. The other two battles were Samsara vs Void and Wind Howl vs Misty Rain. Compared to the other two, these matches weren't as hot of a topic, but this was only a comparison. There was no weak team in the playoffs. However, there were always tears that had to accompany laughter. These 8 teams managed to charge into the playoffs, but there were also 2 teams that had to leave the alliance. Yet for these weak, relegated teams, not much attention would be given to them except among their fans. Instead, it was the teams that were going to replace them that were hot topics. Team Myth. After being approved by the Alliance, a whole new team was born. They debuted in the Alliance-held press conference on the first day of the new week and enthusiastically expressed their determination and will. In the past, new teams like this would elicit a lot of attention and curiosity, but today, the reporters all hoped that this new team called Myth would finish their rambling and get lost. The team everyone was waiting for was the next team, the team with God Yishu, the team that had miraculously crushed Excellent Era and charged into the alliance, happy. Under this background, the Q&A session after Team Myth had finished their speech was filled with nothing but very cooperative silence from the reporters. In the end, a few veteran reporters asked a few cliché questions out of courtesy. Team Myth ended up leaving, dispirited, with the alliance press officers repeated, "Are there any more questions?" Yet the moment Myth left, the still and low-spirited reporters suddenly jumped up with enthusiasm. Those who were practically drooling as they napped seemed to shine with the glow of being recharged. It should be happy now, right? Where are they? Team Myth hadn't even completely left, and they saw the response of the reporters, wanting to cry. Ahem. Next, let's welcome Team Happy. The Alliance press officer continued to act as a host. They're coming, they're coming. It didn't need to be mentioned how excited the reporters were. As soon as Happy's people appeared, flashes enveloped the room. People were taking photos non-stop until Happy sat in their seats, especially for Yishu. Fuck, they hadn't managed to take photos of him for so long, today they were gonna take their fill. Yishu was so blinded by the flashes that he couldn't even open his eyes. Even the Alliance press officer couldn't watch this go on and hurriedly cleared his throat and announced that the press conference was beginning. This press conference was an exhibition of the new teams, so all the members would be attending. However, they had to stay within the rules. For example, Su Mucheng couldn't sit on stage at this time. As for Sun Jeping, he had already bid them farewell and left for Heavenly Swords to prepare for the next season and didn't attend either. As for Wu Chen, Yi Shu and Chen Guo had asked for his opinion and he had expressed that he was satisfied with being able to take part in such a spectacular match. He didn't have any further hopes for the Pro League and wished to focus on the guild completely. Do you really have no more hopes? Yi Shu and Chen Guo didn't ask that because they knew the answer. Wu Chen definitely still hoped he could take part, but he knew what the reality of it was. He wasn't young anymore and not very skilled either. An occasional striking performance meant little. What was more important was that he knew that Su Mucheng would be joining Happy in the next season. Go and fight over this place with the #1 launcher of the Alliance? Here, Wu Chen let go of it all. He was a player with limited talent. Being able to perform and help out in this high-level and crucial match, helping his team enter the Alliance, that was his peak already. Aiming even higher was too unrealistic for him. Wu Chen left the team, but still attended the press conference as Team Happy's guild leader. The guild department had always been a very important part of the team and acted as the right and left hands to the team with the R&D department. Guild leader. A guild leader of any normal guild was nothing impressive, but a guild leader of a club was a very important position. Team Happy was on stage and the press conference began. First, was the introduction for the team members. Then, the boss of the team, Chen Guo, who was truly the first in the team, had to say a few words. Since the Alliance had informed them beforehand, they naturally had a speech prepared. However, while Chen Guo might be open and extroverted usually, she was still rather nervous in a situation like this. Yet, reminding herself that she was the boss of the team that defeated Excellent Era, Chen Guo steeled herself. Then, the captain would have to say a few words. Yi Shu, after all these years, finally appeared in an event like this. The flashes immediately started up again. Boss Chen Guo represented the club as a whole. Even though this club of theirs didn't have all those individual departments, they were one in name. As for the captain, he represented the team. Everyone was eagerly anticipating Yi Shu's speech. However, as they listened, the reporters with good memories began to scratch their heads. No way, how come this speech sounds so familiar? Really? Yeah, I've definitely heard it somewhere. I know it. Pick a few keywords and search it up? Yeah, that line just now was too familiar. I'll search it up. Soon enough, the answer was out. The reporters wanted to cry. Fuck, wasn't this the speech the captain of Team Heavenly Swords had used last year when they entered the Alliance? It's so rare for you to attend a press conference like this, would it kill you to take it a little more seriously? Chapter 1059. What is Excellent Era? Heavenly Swords and Happy were in completely different situations. Yet, just like that, Yi Shu calmly used the other captain's speech, not even making an effort to modify it. Upon finding out, the reporters felt like plastic bags blowing in the wind. The only saving grace was this kind of promotional speech was all empty talk, so there usually wouldn't be anything interesting to write about. After listening to this speech while clutching at their hearts, it finally came to the Q&A session that they were most eager for. Next we have our question and answer session. The Alliance press officer had only just announced this when a sea of hands rose. Thankfully, Team Myth had already left, otherwise they would cry for sure, seeing the difference in their treatment. Having too many hands raised was troublesome as well. Pointing at a person would cause a group to stand. Then it had to be specified whose question was being answered from that group. The first chosen one stood under the envious and jealous gazes of the other reporters. Hello, I'm a reporter from City BB City. First of all, congratulations to Happy on winning the finals of the Challenger League and gaining the qualifications to entering the Pro Alliance. The reporter directed this congratulations to the entire team, but his gaze was fixated on Yi Shu. Yi Shu had no choice but to respond for the entire team. Thanks. I don't mean to disrespect Happy, but Happy truly achieved a miraculous victory. However, what I'm more shocked about isn't the result, but the process. In the team competition, Happy had the initiative the entire way. Compared to simply victory, this is a far more impressive accomplishment. I'm curious as to how Happy managed that, the reporter said. This isn't something to be shocked about, Yi Shu said with a smile. Opportunity always smiles on those who are prepared. Prepared? The reporter was stunned for a moment. From what I know of, Excellent Era wasn't negligent with their preparations for this match. From the beginning of the offline matches, they had done specialized research into how to face this final match. In the last week, they even closed themselves off for special training. I believe Excellent Era was very well prepared. Unfortunately for them, we were more prepared, Yi Shu said. The reporters were going crazy. Was it fun to give us all these vague statements? This was just wasting time. Why are you so certain? The reporter hurriedly asked. Because we prepared for this match for a full year, Yi Shu replied. Everyone was struck dumb. One side had started preparing since the offline matches, which could be considered at most a month of preparations, while the other had prepared for a whole year. This was true. All the reporters immediately realized this. This was because a year ago was when Excellent Era had been relegated. Even if you used your knee to think, you know that this would be an unprecedented boss in the Challenger League, the ultimate final boss. No matter who it was, if they wanted to conquer the Challenger League, they would have to get through this step. They completely trusted that Happy had started researching Excellent Era from that time forth. A year of research, and this research was directed towards Excellent Era that Yi Shu was extremely familiar with in the first place. As for Excellent Era, even though they had known since the start that Happy had Yi Shu, would they put everything into studying an opponent like Happy? The one they had been on guard against this entire time was just Yi Shu, no? Yet in that team competition, every single member of Happy had shown their worth. They might not have been the MVPs, but in that match, everyone managed to display their strengths to the fullest. Was this because Happy's players were in a better state? Now everyone knew that it wasn't the case. This was the result of ample preparations. For this match, who knew how much specialized training Happy had gone through? A full year of preparations sent everyone into speechlessness for a while. It wasn't until the Alliance press officer called out that the reporters came to again. The second chosen reporter stood up, but his question was no longer about that match. That match had been a whole week ago. Focusing on it now would be a waste of pages, and there were more interesting things to report now anyways. I want to direct this question to Captain Yi Shu. As Excellent Era's ex-captain, I trust you've heard of the recent news that Excellent Era is being sold. What thoughts do you have on this? I believe that Excellent Era won't fall just because of this. Excellent Era has a shining future ahead of them, Yi Shu said. But from the current situation, Excellent Era is likely to be disbanded and cleared out in a sale. The name Excellent Era might cease to exist, the reporter retorted. Yi Shu smiled and said, with so many people who care for and love Excellent Era out there, do you really think that the name Excellent Era would cease to exist? I believe that a successor to Excellent Era will appear. Excellent Era won't crumble because of one man's decision. This is because Excellent Era isn't an asset to be sold, but a mindset, even a culture. It exists within the hearts of everyone who cares about and loves Excellent Era. They are the true people of Excellent Era. This is something that no one can sell. So long as they exist, excellent era will never fall. Quote. Brilliant. Someone suddenly yelled loudly. The reporters all turned their heads and saw that one of their fellows had been unable to keep to himself any longer. Those who knew this person knew that he was a deeply loyal fan of excellent eras. This speech that sounded simply like pretty but empty words to most managed to move this real excellent era fan. This was because only real excellent era fans would know what sort of panic and anxiety that the news coming from excellent era during this time had brought them. Now, Yishu's words had awakened him. Excellent era will never fall. This person said with force, seeming to have come to some sort of decision. Yes, on stage, Yishu nodded his head firmly in response. The ex-captain of Excellent Era had taken a new responsibility now, and when faced with Excellent Era, he hadn't shown any mercy. Excellent Era's current situation could even be seen as his personal handiwork. However, he was a true person of Excellent Era. He knew better than anyone what Excellent Era was. Excellent Era wasn't a good or service to be sold, and not something that the owner could destroy with a single decision to sell. So long as Excellent Era's spirit lived on, it would continue to endure. If worse came to worst, they could always copy Happy and create an internet cafe, rising back up as grassroots. They might not have Excellent Era's ace accounts or ace players, but they had Excellent Era's spirit. So long as they had that, they were Excellent Era. Thank you. This reporter had forgotten his job already and stood, bowing deeply to Yishu, who was on stage. Those who knew him well knew that this loyal Excellent Era fan had published many articles condemning and doubting Yishu upon the release of the news of Yishu being at Happy. But now, he had managed to gain an understand of what Excellent Era truly was from this old captain. He felt that he had to give him this show of gratitude. You're welcome. Good luck. In that moment, Yishu didn't seem to see a reporter either, but a brother that had once fought by his side. An unfathomable atmosphere had blanketed the press conference and, in that moment, no one was able to come up with a question. Ahem, is there any reporter that still has a question to ask? The Alliance press officer asked. Question. Of course they did. The questions that had been begging to be asked had been held back for this occasion. But now, after gaining an understanding of Yishu's inner thoughts, they suddenly found that these questions had all been answered in that instant. Everything that had happened between Yishu and Excellent Era in the past had no gossip value any longer. They had already clearly felt Yishu's true feelings. Chapter 1060. Can understand. The question about Excellent Era caused the atmosphere to die down a little. It was only when the press officer asked for the third time if there were any more questions that a reporter finally stood. Hello, Captain Yishu. Your words just now filled us with confidence for Excellent Era's future. However, I still want to hear your personal thoughts on Excellent Era being put up for sale. Thank you. It was only until this person finished speaking that the reporters realized something. Wasn't this the same question as before? However, Yishu's response wasn't exactly answering the question. His answer was one that didn't answer the question directly, but followed from it. He had switched topics and left everyone in deep contemplation about it. It was good that there were people who managed to stay clear-headed. With this reporter's emphasis and repetition of the question, the other reporters realized that this god, who had never really interacted with the media, would be very hard to deal with. Yishu's expression wasn't so calm as it was before. To be honest, it pains me and at the same time, I feel very disappointed. Hearing this, the eyes of the reporters lit up. By pained and disappointed, are you referring to the decision to sell Excellent Era? Yes, Yishu nodded. Excellent Era is at its most desperate times and, deciding to put Excellent Era up for sale at a time like this, I think, this is a complete betrayal and abandonment of what they once fought for. In this decision, Excellent Era has become nothing more than a commodity. Yishu didn't mention a specific name in his speech, but who else could make the decision to sell Excellent Era? Only the boss, Dao Zhan. However, the reporters wouldn't lose out from making this all clearer. Immediately, someone asked, so the one that caused you this pain and disappointment is actually the boss of Excellent Era, Dao Zhan, right? Yes, Yishu nodded. If it was for the continued and better growth and development of the team, no matter in what shape or form, I could try to understand. Since everyone looks at problems differently, they would naturally come up with differing solutions. However, excuse me if I cannot bring myself to understand the decision to sell the team. But you just said that, no matter what, Excellent Era wouldn't fall. Yes, Excellent Era will never fall, but some people already have, Yi Shu replied. This time, no reporter stood to ask for clarification on who this person was. After these questions, everyone had more insight to what Yi Shu meant. Excellent Era did belong to Dao Zhan, but this was only from a business standpoint. From an esports standpoint, Excellent Era was a team that existed in the hearts of all its fans. Even though Excellent Era belonged to Dao Zhan in name, he could only have the commodity. When he put Excellent Era up for sale, he had completely left the true Excellent Era that existed in the hearts of the people. This time, the reporters truly understood. Some people were thinking to themselves quietly. Others had already opened up their laptops and started typing, and those who were more used to pen and paper started jotting stuff down. With something to write about, the reporters seemed to be afraid to forget something, already beginning to draft their articles and forgetting their current situation. The Alliance's press officer had attended countless interviews and press conferences, but this was the first time he had seen reporters forget where they were and start drafting up their articles. He was stunned for a long while before managing to react. Ahem, are there any more questions? His question managed to bring these reporters back to reality. Everyone snapped out of it, feeling unsettled by their actions just now. It was almost like they had been bewitched. They all hurriedly composed their thoughts. It wasn't until the press officer asked again that some people finally sat straight, focusing on Yi Shu who was on stage. Everyone was already very satisfied with what they had managed to elicit from this press conference. However, the one on stage right now was Yi Shu. After all these years, this was his first time ever attending a press conference. They couldn't just let him go like that. After so many years, there were too many questions they had for Yi Shu about all sorts of matters. They had to make the most of today. Even if they couldn't think of any big questions, using some small meaningless questions to drag things out was good, too. Thinking of this, there were immediately some reporters who raised their hands. The one who was picked probably had yet to think of a good question to drag things out and made a few non-committal sounds before gathering his thoughts and asking, "May I know why Team Happy didn't attend the press conference after the Challenger League?" The reporters all stared at him. This question was one that the reporters who had been stood up were desperate to know, but these reporters weren't so docile and well-behaved to wait until today to ask. They had already pried for an answer from the Alliance after the press conference came to an end with Happy's lack of attendance. The Alliance made up a reason for why Happy didn't attend the press conference that day, so it was no longer a problem anymore. Now this person was asking again. This was rather tactless. The press officer that had given them the reason before was right there. Hearing this, he might think they had no more questions and end the press conference. That couldn't be allowed to happen. It was a good thing that while the problem was resolved for the Alliance and media, it wasn't unexpected for Happy. This time, it wasn't Yi Shu who answered, but Chen Guo. First of all, I'd like to apologize to everyone who came to the press conference that day. Chen Guo imitated a professional, official tone. As everyone knows, Happy is a very ordinary grassroots team. We've never attended a pro match before and don't have any experience with this. That day, though we received the call about the press conference, we were delighted upon winning the championship and forgot. I really am sorry. This explanation was more or less the same as the excuse the Alliance had given, but the reporter, looking at the stage, suddenly felt that something wasn't right. He gazed at Yi Shu who was on the far right. But God, Yi Shu, the reporter had only gotten there before his words got stuck. Yi Shu, on the other hand, smiled and responded, "What about me?" "No, nothing." The reporter was about to say that God Yi Shu had a lot of experience with pro matches, but then he remembered that while Yi Shu had much experience with the matches, had he ever attended a press conference? Never. With the other's meaningful smile, the reporter decided to not bring it up. With that problem settled, another reporter was called to speak. "May we have some information on what plans Happy has for the next season? For example, is Happy planning anything in the summer transfer window?" "We've already settled a transfer," Chen Guo replied, tone serious. "Can you give us some specifics?" "Su Mucheng has confirmed that she will transfer for free to Team Happy next season," Chen Guo said. This was something the reporters had guessed already with their sharp senses. However, an official announcement was still far more meaningful. With this, Team Happy wouldn't be just held up by Yi Shu. Would the best partners in the Alliance resurface in Happy? Could we have some details on the contract Su Mucheng will be signing with Happy? Since the transfer of pro players was a hot topic, reporters were interested in the contents of contracts, too. Logic said that an all-star player like Su Mucheng wasn't someone an internet cafe team like Happy could keep. However, there was already an even bigger god residing there, so people couldn't judge Happy through this usual logic. Oh, we're still discussing some details, so we can't leak anything yet. Chen Guo's response was rather well formulated, but the awkwardness in her expression that had appeared in that split second didn't go unnoticed by the reporters. Pay and treatment was something Chen Guo worried about. They had managed to get through the Challenger League, but now it was the Pro League. Everyone was a pro player now. She couldn't have them play pro matches with just board and food in repayment. What sort of contract should she give to them? The very thought gave Chen Guo a headache. She had too little experience because no grassroots team had ever managed to slaughter their way to the Pro League before. The 1,000-something RMB in being an internet cafe employee? That definitely wasn't appropriate. But, going by pro player standards? Chen Guo had gleaned some understanding of it. Currently, the income for pro players was very high. For example, Team Tyranny's captain Han Wenqing had earned 30 million in 3 years. That meant 10 million per year and 200,000 per week. In Chen Guo's eyes, Yi Shu was an existence beyond even Han Wenqing, but, let alone something higher, just Han Wenqing's income would cause Chen Guo to cry to death. However, Han Wenqing's contract ended this year. He'd have no problem renewing it, but his pay might decrease by a lot. After all, he was a veteran past his peak. His current record of having the highest salary might come to close this summer. The most common contract in the teams of the Alliance was a 3-year contract. And, for the Golden Generation who had joined in the 4th season, most of their contracts would come to an end this summer after the 9th season. They were all at the peak of their forms as well, and then if you considered the growth Glory had gone through with the teams all flourishing, a new record for pro player income might appear this summer. Under this circumstance, Team Happy dealt with their players' wage through board and food. This was extremely unscientific. The reporters acutely sensed Chen Guo's awkwardness and they immediately keenly posed another question. This time, their target was no longer Yi Shu. They focused on Tang Ru. She had already caught the attention of countless teams and was an extremely valuable player in the eyes of most. Ms. Tang Ru, may I ask, are you familiar with the current income situation of pro players? The reporters asked.